patients do end up coming with rheumatoid arthritis and many other forms of seronegative or seropositive forms of arthritis. And it's become very difficult for the patients also to handle the immunosuppressant drugs that they are kept under for years on end. And that also causes a lot of other effects on the other systems, and they are not able to function. And we have seen that with homeopathy, along with allopathy sometimes, and sometimes not even with any allopathy provided, the extent to which we can help the patient as far as pain management is concerned, as far as improving their daily function is concerned, is quite a wide prospect. So this is just a brief introduction of what I'm going to be talking about today. I'll just share my presentation screen so that it becomes easier for you to see, and you can note down whatever you feel is important for you.
Are you able to do it? Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just the first. So we know that rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune condition. It's a chronic inflammatory disorder, and it not just affects your joints. It also has extra-articular manifestations, including the skin, eyes, lungs, blood vessels. And unlike the wear and tear damage of osteoarthritis, the rheumatoid arthritis affects the limbs and joints and causes a lot of painful bone erosion and joint swelling. So what happens is, over a period of time, the patient starts to lose function, both because of the pain, both because of chronic fatigue related to the pain, and also the deformities setting in, causing physical disabilities for the patient to manage over a long period of time. Generally, you will it's unfair to assume that rheumatoid arthritis cases seen over a few years, minimum 5 to 7 years, helps get us a very broad understanding of how homeopathy can help in terms of management in rheumatoid arthritis. Almost 70 to 80% of the times, if not 90, the diagnosis is already given to us. The patient is already seeking allopathic treatment elsewhere, and they come to you with the hope that they want to try something else for the pain management, because how many anti-inflammatories will you take? How much steroid will you take? How much methotrexate will you take? So the prescription, as far as modern medicine goes, is pretty standard. They give anti-inflammatories, they give quinolones, they give methotrexate, and they give steroid. Visolone or cortisone as it's required. And the point becomes that after a point, these drugs, including the extra-articular manifestations of rheumatoid arthritis, including the side effects of the drugs, it becomes more of a much bigger disorder than rheumatoid arthritis is. So it becomes very difficult even for us to manage when somebody has already taken immunosuppressants for a very long time. But there is still a lot of scope for us to provide the patient a lot of pain relief and help improve their daily functioning, which they are not able to do. So the most important thing that you would want to ask the patient is what they are expecting as far as from your treatment when you're treating a case of rheumatoid arthritis. It's not curable. Your RE factor is never going to go from positive to negative. If it does, there is an issue with the lab for sure. And there is always a necessity to monitor the inflammatory markers, monitor the autoimmune status of that patient, and also their disability affection, their emotional status along, because it's a chronic disease that encompasses a lot more issues than just your joint pains, which is more common in conditions like osteoarthritis. So we know the standard symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis: morning stiffness over 30 minutes. The patient is unable to get out of bed for minutes to hours on end sometimes. And there is chronic fatigue, there's joint stiffness, there is pain, there's swelling, there is redness, there is inflammation. It may or may not start from smaller joints, or it may directly affect larger joints, but generally the affection is pretty much combined. You will always have affections of the smaller joints, like your finger joints, and very much later is when the toe joints start getting involved. The earlier stages of rheumatoid arthritis, you will always have patients complaining of stiffness in their fingers and they're unable to hold any objects in the morning when they get up. So this becomes a common symptom of rheumatoid arthritis, but it needs to be corroborated with your investigations as time progresses. So about 40% of the people who have rheumatoid arthritis also may not experience joint pains only. They will come to you with some form of extra-articular manifestations. They will come with either erythema nodosum on the skin, either they will have some form of endocarditis or episode of endocarditis that they have had before. They may come to you with presentation of asthma, which is actually an extra-articular manifestation of rheumatoid arthritis, and they may not have any familial history of asthma in the family, or they may not be having, they may not be known cases of bronchial asthma before. They will also have issues with neurodermatitis, they will have neuralgias, and they will have bone marrow erosion and contusions. They will have easy injuries, easy falls. So that is also something that you will want to look for in a case of rheumatoid arthritis. The severity of symptoms varies, and it varies according to the description of the patient. If the patient is very enduring in terms of their pain, then they will downplay how much it hurts. But compared to the pain, gradation of pain as far as osteoarthritis is concerned, rheumatoid arthritis hurts much, much more. The pain is much, much more and lasts for much, much longer. Also because deformities, once they set in, they are irreversible. So a point will come where the patient may have to seek surgical intervention for some complaints, like if there is bone erosion and joint involvement involved, because of the osteoarthritic changes in a joint which already has rheumatoid arthritis. So it's quite a mix of two conditions over a period of 5 to 10 years that the patient has experienced in rheumatoid arthritis. So it's very common for them to either complain of myalgia. They will have very less flexibility in joints, so and very decreased aerobic fitness. So over a period of time, you will find them in terms of their activity, their stamina not lasting beyond a certain point. They would explain to you that this is something I could do, even with rheumatoid arthritis, this is something I could do for 30 minutes. Now it's not possible for me to do 10 to 15 minutes also. And standing, basic functions like getting out of bed, standing for a bath in the bathroom, cooking, cleaning, simple things, simple everyday things. When we start moving and in advanced function in terms of their jobs, in terms of their work life, that becomes even more complicated because that is a hindrance. The pain is a hindrance, the fatigue is a hindrance. So decreased mobility and the disability along with the other symptoms make it very difficult for the person to remain physically active, and that again contributes to increased vulnerability to heart disease, increased vulnerability to other allergic phenomenon that can happen because of lack of movement per se. So the most important part we need to understand as far as homeopaths are concerned, like I said, most of the people end up coming to you with a diagnosis, with a ready diagnosis. Like, I have rheumatoid arthritis, I have had for 6 months, 1 year, 10 years, whatever number of time. And these are the tests that were done. This is what is the status right now. And I'm on these drugs. This is a ready diagnosis for you. When it comes to us diagnosing such a case firsthand, please remember, within the first 6 months, if you have diagnosed rheumatoid arthritis, within the first 6 months to 1 year, if you have successfully controlled the disease, the deformities set in much later, which is not true for modern medicine. This is a study that we have conducted when we are co-treating a lot of patients with a rheumatologist attached to a hospital close to my clinic. And we have found that within the first 6 months to 1 year, if you treat with homeopathy and if they are already on painkillers, then keep the painkiller as an SOS when you are not available or there is some real emergency and they're taking it, but it's just for, absolutely unbearable reasons. Then the deformities are much, much later. You can postpone the deformities. You cannot prevent deformities in rheumatoid arthritis because that is the nature of the disease. You have to take the case for what the status is of that patient at that point in time. Try not to promise the patient that, oh, your deformities are going to go, your joints are going to go straight back to normalcy. That's never going to happen, and that's not even right on our part to expect the patient, give the hope to that patient that they will be absolutely fine. It will be manageable, and that has to be communicated to the patient, because that becomes our drawback otherwise. If we don't understand our scope and limitation in terms of management of a chronic disease like this, if it were something like tonsillitis, allergic asthma, eczema, we know that it can be managed and controlled for years on end without any trouble. But in terms of autoimmune conditions, it's very, very difficult to say for sure that we are definitely not going to be able to arrest the progress entirely, because it's an autoimmune process. We cannot for sure say that tomorrow your antibodies are not going to, for next 5 years they are not going to act up. They will, because the autoimmune condition is also attached to their mental state. None of that is in our control. So when it comes to managing that, we have to be very, very clear in terms of our management and our scope in terms of that case, at whatever stage they have come to. The second most important thing, we will always experience this kind of dilemma with the patient when they have an acute episode, acute exacerbation of rheumatoid arthritis, joint swelling up, they haven't been able to get out of bed, and the pain is unbearable. The first reaction would be, just pop an anti-inflammatory. Could be Voveran, could be whatever is available in your region. And that is the first thing that will enable them to get out of it. Don't hold that against them. It is something we can still work with. Even if they are on a weekly dose of methotrexate, even if they are on immunosuppressants like quinolones and your steroids, they can be minimized and brought to a very bare minimal dose, and homeopathy can still help in terms of pain management and improving daily function, because ultimately that is the goal, that we need to help them to get better at managing their existing lives with the disease. Many a times patients are unaware of the repercussions of taking so much of immunosuppressants over a period of time. Now that there is Google, everybody Googles everything, and oh, this is going to fry my liver, oh, this is going to fry my kidneys. But yes, you can't, those are the medications that you can't just stop. Similar to how people just pop one tablet of antibiotic and like, yeah, my throat was hurting and I took an ASI 250. So it's not like that. It's not supposed to be done like that. Sorry. So the second thing, another thing in this aspect is always taper down the immunosuppressants that they are on, no matter whichever it is. Give them the option of keeping the anti-inflammatories as an SOS, because that is a crutch they need to just keep their hand on, and it's more for their mental peace of mind, because you will know for sure that your remedy will help, but they may still take time to have some faith in you when it comes to managing a long-standing chronic condition. So another aspect of where homeopathy can help is in managing the acute flare-ups. We have beautiful, beautiful remedies in which the description in our source books is so specific that I don't think a single allopathic drug has descriptions like that. The patients describing the quality of pain, the area of pain, the nature of the pain, the extension of the pain. In allopathy, there is not a single drug which has that. Thankfully, we do. We have a big, huge barrage of remedies that can help in different conditions, in different joints. We have joint-specific remedies, we have site-specific remedies, we have day, season, time-specific remedies. So use that to your fullest advantage. When you come across your repertory, for example, you will see thousands of rubrics in the extremities version and in the generalities when you're just looking at rheumatoid arthritis. There is not the rubric is not rheumatoid arthritis. It is still called rheumatic arthritis, and then it transfers you to, at least in the synthesis repertory, it transfers you to the pain joints rheumatic. But the amount of remedies we have available under that single rubric is proof enough that we can help in chronic diseases like this. And those are proven. Those are proven with our masters' hard work, with our founders' hard work over the period of years. So don't lose hope that initially for the first 6 months or 1 year that you're treating a rheumatoid arthritis patient, you will have these questions of self-doubt. I did that. This is not getting handled, this is not getting managed, but you have to remind yourself it's a chronic disease. Also understand the patient's difficulty with trying to bear the pain and bear the disability and bear the lack of function when it comes to handling this disease. The rheumatoid arthritis form in juvenile age group, also called Still's disease, is also a variation that you might observe, but it is still quite rare unless and until you're attached to a polyclinic or hospital, or pediatrician is referring cases to you. Your cases of Still's disease will still not be as much as full-blown adult rheumatoid arthritis development. So in addition to just helping with the complaints of rheumatoid arthritis, their pain, muscle stiffness, everything, joint stiffness and muscle pain, etc. The other aspect that where we can genuinely help is in terms of their emotional state. We have rubrics: ailments from bad news, ailments from fright, shock. They're not there just for the heck of it. They are absolutely beautiful in arriving at the essence of the remedy in practice. That's when you're taking a case, you will always see a patient describing with great fervor about what they have been through over these years. And that somehow helps us arrive at the exact remedy that we want, that actually describes the story of the patient. And we have to be able to relate that, because otherwise there's no going anywhere in terms of handling this complaint. And over a period of time, rheumatoid arthritis patients will develop osteoarthritis because of frank degeneration, and they're more prone to degeneration than other patients without rheumatoid arthritis. So a time will come where they, like I said, they may need surgical intervention, they may need joint replacement surgery, but the scope of homeopathy in this aspect is also, again, pain management, and we can delay the rapid progression and maintenance of the joint structure as much as possible, and mobility in terms of their activities, even when they develop a secondary osteoarthritis kind of complaints in the main framework of rheumatoid arthritis. The limitations part is quite hard, because this is something I think most of us see in our practice. Drug interaction and interference. We still don't have papers and data enough to elicit how much of our drugs interfere with allopathy. We know it goes in the opposite direction. So their way of treating is exactly opposite to our way of treating. We are allowing the body to try to figure out a way to come to that balance and maintain the homeostasis as far as the patient's vital force is concerned. That's in our language, but that is not something a patient will understand. And if you're co-treating it with your rheumatologist or your GP or your MD physician who has referred that case to you, they will definitely not understand what we are talking about when we say vital force, that my patient's vital force has to be balanced. They will not understand it. Don't even try to explain it. So the best part comes here is when, if you corroborate your homeopathic management of the case with clinical scientific data, like timely investigations, there are reports showing that they are showing significant improvement. Use measurement scales to determine how far along the patient has come. It will help us as well, on whether the remedies are genuinely helping, whether you need a change in remedy, whether you need an intercurrent, whether you need anything else. But you will always have a difficulty when these patients are on immunosuppressants, because the side effects of immunosuppressants along with your anti-inflammatories. They will have dyspepsia, they will have other muscle fatigue, they will develop secondary osteoporosis because of immunosuppressants, again leading back to causing further degradation of joints, degeneration of joints, causing osteoarthritis, making the rheumatoid arthritis worse. So it's a vicious cycle, which we sort of have to put a lot of speed breakers in to slow it down, because that is where we will do a fabulous job in, because we have much more broader scope of in terms of drugs. We don't have the same 5 drugs that we have in, and it's not homeopathy versus allopathy. Because my interest lies in integrated medicine, I believe in conditions like this, in rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis or any form of autoimmune disorders, where the patient would just as easily turn to allopathy. They should be made aware that we can help just as much, and you don't need to go through that barrage of medication to manage a disease if the patient is educated about it. Unfortunately, there is not much awareness about it, and the media bashing of homeopathy does not help anybody in this. But if you corroborate it with scientific data, manage your data related to the patient, if you are co-treating it with another physician, it always helps, because you have evidence to corroborate what you're treating. And over a period of time, you will also gain knowledge from what you've treated, where you've gone wrong, because all of us will make mistakes. Our first remedy may not be the exact remedy, exact appropriate, essence of the case that we are taking. And over a period of time, you look, yeah, this was not working in the first year, but there is significant improvement after this intercurrent I gave, or this acute has not worked, this potency has not worked. But that is something for us to understand, that this is where our limitation also lies when it comes to managing a chronic disease like this, because the disease doesn't last for 7 days, it lasts for years. For some people, it may last for all their lives if they have developed it at a very young age. So it is something that we need to understand from the patient's aspect, also from our aspect, as our understanding of homeopaths is that we need to be able to enable them to make that choice of turning to homeopathy in pain management, in management of rheumatoid arthritis, than popping that painkiller the first thing they get up in the morning. And over a period of time, it is possible. And we can help have our work do the talking, rather than just go against the normal protocol that they have. Their protocol is actually quite essential in helping us understand the status of the patient. So when we learn in medicine, when we are learning, we also learn what are the different grades of, what are the timings that you are expecting the patient to be aggravated. But that is something that will help us as homeopaths to differentiate between the common and the peculiar symptoms. So you will definitely know where you stand in terms of managing that particular case, no matter what state they have come to you in. And we have to be able to understand where we stand in terms of managing that particular case. One case is different from the other, their histories are different, their stories are different, diagnosis may be the same, but their stories are definitely 110% different from each other. And that is where our role comes in, and we can definitely help with that. And do not hesitate to take, ask the patient to take a consultation from a rheumatologist or a joint specialist, whichever country you're in. I don't know what they are called in other places, but here, if you have understanding physicians in your area, you will definitely be able to get a good evaluation, and you will always have corroboration of the fact of how you have progressed or not in the case that you're treating. So that's the basics of rheumatoid arthritis, how much, where we can help, where we can't help. And this another thing is, we in conditions like this, we have a tendency to feel for the patient that they are undergoing that much pain. You would be tempted to change the remedies often for their acute flare-ups. Don't do it. Pointless. Because over a period of time, it's not like allopathy that if you take non-stop azithromycin for no reason, you're going to be resistant to it. There is no concept like that in homeopathy. So if I'm not responding to Leadum today, it's not that I'm going to not respond to Leadum tomorrow. Or Gavaikam helped me the episode before last doesn't mean it will help me today. It depends on what that acute flare-up is, and that acute totality is on that day that that patient has consulted you. So to be able to choose that good melee of your acute flare-ups, your acute remedies, your anti-miasmatic, and your constitutional remedies, and maybe a necessary intercurrent depending on how chronic the condition is or where you're stuck in a case, will definitely help in understanding the scope of our condition. And not being aware of these things is where our limitation lies. So we can't be just giving Bryonia, Rota, Rustox, Arnica whenever we want, because those are the known remedies in management of joint pains, or the most famous remedies for articular involvement. The most important part where we come to in management of a case is how we approach it. So detailed case history, of course, physical, mental aspect, understanding the stage at which the patient has come to us, your repertorization, your source, you can refer to your source books. Now we have software, so you can do everything in one place. And essentially identifying whether, like I said before, the essence of the remedy is matching with the story of the patient. It's not a saga to match, but basic elements in that story, basic elements in that remedy should match, because if that doesn't, the remedy is definitely not going to work. And determining the dosage, determining the potency and repetition of the remedy is also essential. So whether the patient keeps telling you that, my pain is really bad, you can't definitely not be the one to say, oh, take it 4 times a day just on a whim. Don't do that, because there is a chance that we may initiate homeopathic aggravation. In conditions like in autoimmune conditions especially, there are huge chances of homeopathic aggravation. So always preferably start with a lower potency and lower repetition. Or you could just give it in divided doses, preferably in water, because it acts much better than dry doses. Adequate follow-up. Try for the initial 6 months to 1 year, try and keep the follow-up at least once in a fortnight, if not weekly, depending on how the patient is accessible to you. But try to evaluate your position as far as treatment is concerned every 15 days, every month, depending on how. And once that rapport sets, and this cocktail of remedies, I can't say cocktail, but a group of remedies for the acute, the chronic, and the intercurrent is set right now, I can manage it. So it takes at least a year or more for you to settle into that group, because you will not have enough data to corroborate where you stand in terms of treatment, because it's not, like I said, it's not a weekly disease. It's not a week lasting issue. Acute flare-ups do last up anything from 24 hours to 5 days, almost, sometimes even longer, depending on how bad the condition is. So adequate follow-ups when it comes to doing your blood tests, like especially inflammatory markers, CRP, ESR, their hemoglobin also goes for a toss. So try and keep those matters in check, and that will also help you corroborate with the data, the clinical scientific data that we need to prove that homeopathy works. A patient's language is essential as far as understanding how much the patient is better. The lab reports may still not reflect it, but at a point, the lab reports have to reflect that the patient is feeling better. They will match, and they have to match, because that's where the scientific data and the clinical corroboration of your treatment plan is concerned. So these are just basic list of remedies. There are many more, but it doesn't make sense in me enlisting all the remedies. You can have a look at your repertories as well. The repertory I use is synthesis repertory, because it has a much bigger remedy base, and it has very specific rubrics that will help. And it's a good combination of a different understanding of repertories. I have also had a good success with using the Boger Bonninghausen repertory in terms of acute flare-ups, because their acutes are quite specific and quite well acting when it comes to using that repertory specifically for acute flare-ups. This is just a list I have given. You can take a screenshot if you want of this, and I will just go into a little bit of explaining what remedies will help where. You have your acute phases and flare-ups, and these are the remedies which I have used most commonly in my practice, and I have seen my mother using them in her practice and with Dr. Master. So these are just 23 remedies I think that I have used in so far. Let me know if you need me to wait here so I can, otherwise I'll proceed. Okay. These remedies are, I'm considering this group of remedies especially for intercurrents, where the nosodes and your sarcodes can come in play for intercurrents. But for constitution, you have to consider a few major groups or salts or combinations in terms of affections of joints. Your usual Kalika, causticum and all are there, yes, but you will have the a special affiliation of iodum, but not iodum individually as a drug. Of course, if it's applicable, it definitely works, but iodum in combination, aurum iode, or you have ars iode, or you have kali iode, natrum iode, that works very, very well in terms of management of rheumatoid arthritis. Your calcarea phos, calcarea fluor, and calcarea carb, definitely, but calcarea phos and calcarea fluor help better in the biochemic combination, unless it's a specific follow-up, specific constitutional remedy that you know is for the patient and definitely aligns itself with the case of the patient. Then don't advise that in the 6x potency because it won't work. Then you could choose an alternative biochemic salt to help help with the treatment. Biochemic salts, the reason where it helps, not just 6x potency, but even a lower potency of calcarea phos 1x, calcarea fluor 6x, 1x, definitely helps in management of arnica 1x, symphytum 1x. These 1x remedies in the decimal potency definitely help in over a period of time, but they work not in terms of polypharmacy, but they do help in terms of management of the deformities in patients, not to reverse them, but to manage them, to improve their mobility, to improve their calcium metabolism. That's actually a known fact that calcarea fluor and calcarea phos actually help in improving our calcium metabolism. You have your acid group of remedies, which will align itself to the chronic fatigue part, the fatigue from the pain, fatigue from the emotional upheaval that's caused in a chronic disease. So you will have those remedies coming in full charge when it comes to affections specifically related to smaller joints or even the spine in case of picric acid, where these remedies will definitely help. Preferably, if you're giving an intercurrent, try and keep the dose to 200. 1M does cause aggravations. Unless a patient is purely on homeopathy, then you can do that. But if you are co-treating it with allopathy and the patient is already on allopathic medication and you feel stuck in terms of your treatment plan, then I would recommend, at least in my experience, to keep the intercurrent remedy dosage to potency at 200. If not 200, try the LM, because after 200, if you go to the 1M, 10M potencies, there is a full chance that the patient will go into remission of relapse of it's not like this thing is going to get worse. The rheumatoid arthritis is not going to get worse, but they will feel worse because the pain will definitely get aggravated and they may be forced into a flare-up. So that is something you have to be very, very mindful of. You have your LAC group of remedies where you have your wandering joint pains. You have the patient who is listless and unaware and not sure what to do with the complaint that she has. These are just brief anecdotes I'm giving from remedies, but I will explain them further. Aurum group of remedies, especially aurum met and aurum met, aurum sulf, aurum iode, are beautiful in terms of managing a lot of autoimmune conditions, but especially in rheumatoid arthritis, uh, it is a solid group of remedies that helps in managing conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, because it is involved with structure. It's involved with their mental makeup of wanting structure, being in a structure. Your arsenic alb helps. So if we have one remedy covering a big plane of complaints, so that is our strong suit when it comes to treating with homeopathy, and we should definitely be able to use that. There are plant remedies also that will definitely help. You have your pulsatilla, lycopodium, CPI. You have most of your plant remedies will help. Plant remedies specifically help in, like the previous slide suggested, in handling the acute flare-ups. They are excellent. Just make sure that those remedies follow or complement your constitutional remedy well, for which your repertory is an excellent way to confirm that. Uh, Another remedy that we came across in our practice, we have, I think, 3 or 4 cases in which we have given Manganum aceticum as the constitutional remedy. The patient had actually come to us, one of the patients had actually come to us with a presentation of cough. And it was a very specific thing, like just while giving the history, the patient just mentioned that as soon as I lie down, my cough gets better. He has diagnosed as rheumatoid arthritis, but he had already started developing extra-articular complications of chest congestion and bronchitis. And that's when he came to us at the point of extra-articular manifestation and not just the polyarthralgia that's involved in rheumatoid arthritis. So when the patient specifically says that, look for that symptom, try to keep your repertory language and your rubric choices with as many remedies as possible, and then start zeroing down on the remedies. Try to keep your choice of remedies as broad as possible, because this is a big disease. This is not something that's tiny, and we don't have a few remedies. We have a big barrage of remedies to help. So keep it, but when they say specific things like this and you know it's clicked you, try and confirm if this might work, because sometimes just such peculiar symptoms help us in choosing remedies, which I don't think will ever occur to any allopath before, because they don't have this knowledge like we do. So these are some of the remedies that we have seen in practice. You have your benzoic acid. There is always a suppression of, if not gout, but there is suppression of some form of articular complaints in the past. And it always has issues relating to around the ankle joint, around just below the calf, around your ankle joint, your calcaneal pains, your heel pains, but they may present initially as these pains, but they are a part of the bigger disease. They're part of rheumatoid arthritis that gets diagnosed later. If you see their history in terms of over a period of years is when you will see that. But benzoic acid specifically for pain of the tendo Achilles, even in rheumatoid arthritis, even in ankle joint mobility issues, helps immensely. Hecla lava is basically for Osler's nodes and Heberden's nodes. Heberden's nodes, of course, none of this is reversible, but the pain can definitely be managed, especially when they start having deformities in their fingers and their toes. It becomes very difficult for for the patient to even hold a particular object. So when it comes to the mostly women in India, at least, they will come and ask you that I can't hold a clamp to hold the vessel, the pucker that we say in India. So that becomes your clinching point, that you want to help the patient to improve the mobility. And that's where we have specific remedies like that. If you read Hecla lava, it has a specific involvement of the TM joint. It has painful exostosis of bone and hard bony nodosities. Like when you touch a node, especially if Hecla lava is this thing, it feels like a stone. It feels like a small pebble or a stone in the node, which is not true of all patients. You have your famous trio of Rustox, Ruta, Arnica, but Arnica 1X, like I said, works very well in cases of long-standing bone pains, and it works along with your constitution. So if the patient does not want to take any anti-inflammatories, then your Arnica 1X does a wonderful job. Ruta 1X does a wonderful job. Rustox works in acute synovitis, but be careful, because symptoms of Rustocks are also common with the symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis, of morning stiffness, initial movement. And be careful where you will need to assess that, and in terms of how, whether you have other better remedies to use. Gavaikam is it's spelled differently in different repertories, but we say Gavaikam here, and it's a beautiful remedy when it comes to managing the acute flare-ups, especially in your wrist finger joints, and it has very, very painful inflammation, like red joints, warmth, especially aggravated by warmth. They're sore to touch, pressure doesn't work. Even holding a kerchief, simple hanky in their hands is something that's unbearable. You have your sticta pulmonaria, where there is shooting pain in the knees. Your articular joint, your knee joint is something that's very frequently inflamed, which is more aggravated by change of temperature, change of places, and it's also associated with your respiratory complaints. You'll always have some involvement, joint involvement, again, which is a common thing in rheumatoid arthritis, but we have a remedy that works specifically with that they will have their extraarticular manifestation of lung congestion or simple coughs associated with the arthralgias at that point in time. You have your Bellis perennis, which is a good remedy for recurring joint pains. It's a good remedy in patients with RA and even in ankylosing spondylosis. So you may have patients with both RA and ankylosing spondylosis because autoimmune in origin, and they can coexist. But this is one of the remedies that helps your sore lane feeling, which may not be just covered by your Rustocks. This is something that a patient in rheumatoid arthritis will always complain of. So it's a common symptom that way, but we still have the history to support it when it comes to Bellis. Bryonia in a lower potency, especially 3x, helps in managing acute synovitis in larger joints, especially your shoulder, your hip, your knee, and your ankle. Ankle is not so much is what in my practice, but mostly your knee and your hip joints, synovitis specifically to RA, especially when it is complicated with osteoarthritis. So you will have Bryonia 3x work wonders in terms of synovitis of these joints. That was just a brief understanding. You have your other small remedies. You have your Gaultheria for your smaller joints, your Actia spicata for smaller joints. You have larger joints for Ammon-Muir. You have your Berberis vulgaris. You have Xanthoxylum. You have a lot of remedies. The idea is to be able to relate to what led to that. It could be a simple, like a fall or a trip across the road, but it also involves, for us, it's also important to elicit the mental status of the patient, which is why I put together a little bit of what you would be looking for in terms of the history of the mental history of the patient, or the mental psychological makeup of the patient. There is often a sense of loss of support. So if we go to translate it literally, our musculoskeletal system is our support structure, right? Without the musculoskeletal system, it'll just be tissue, so, and cartilage. There's nothing else. So there will always be a history of loss of support. It could be either loss of a parent or a family or a spouse, and it could be organizational. Like, we had a patient who had otherwise a very happy family life, but she lost a mother at a very young age, and over a period of time, the work she was doing, it involved such organizational politics. Being a very ethical person, that conflict starts coming in, and that conflict over a period of time does lead to conditions. In her case, it led to RA. This contradiction is something that they have to fight within themselves. Especially in rheumatoid arthritis, you will see a history of resilience and endurance to pain. Like I said, they may downplay their pain, and They may not explain to you the level at which it is actually hurting. They do struggle. They may seem mild in nature and struggling within their situations, and they may not show much outside, which is what we see in in patients like Pooja and Aurum, right? We don't see them showing much of what they're feeling inside. They try to hide what is truly happening behind the scenes. And if we were to translate it homeopathically, that it means I'm fighting with myself, my immune system is also fighting against me. So that constant antagonism with myself, with criticizing myself on why couldn't I do this better. They're hard hitters. They are self-critical. It's not generic, but this is something that I've observed over a period of time, the last 11 years that we have been treating rheumatoid arthritis, that this is a common thread in most of the patients of almost all of them. This is a very common thread that occurs in cases like rheumatoid arthritis. There's also loss of support also can come from a sense of grief or injustice or betrayal or deception, which they are masking or they are which are unable to forego in life. It is something that they are holding on to and they're fighting with it every single day. So again, that is not something that's true to their nature. That would be essentially something they would have fought against but couldn't. Again, that contradiction sets in. Like I explained, you don't need to ask leading questions. The patient will lead you to it. But if the patient is not forthcoming with the data that you need to choose your constitutional remedy, then this is something you can just ask, like kindly and politely, that was there something in your in your family life or professional life that is something that affected you badly but you couldn't tell anybody, or it is something that you have been fighting with for a very long time. It could be years and years ends of court battles between family, between brothers or between sisters or between family members for money or whatever it is. But because they are very hard set in their understanding of life or their priorities, people who have gone beyond that and done something wrong which they have felt is wrong, but they can't fight those people as much, they can't throw them out of their lives. If that happens, there is quite a chance that they may develop some autoimmune disorder in the future. This is something that's true to all autoimmune disorders, but specifically to RA, it comes from a sense of loss of support, even in ankylosing spondylosis. Along with this, you will always see an element of depression, an element of dullness, an element of chronic mental fatigue arising from the pain, arising from the long-standing psychological situations around them, circumstances around them. But you will have to deal with depression as a part of rheumatoid arthritis. Eventually it could be related to their mobility, to their disabilities as well. Over a period of time, some of these patients reach a level of stoicism when it comes to their emotional status, like, no, this happened 20 years ago, I don't care about it. But when you try to probe after a few sessions with them, or you're not trying to be that therapist, but the data that a patient describes to their therapist is the data a homeopath needs to understand to choose the remedy. So even if you don't have a background in therapy, you do not have to advise the patient on what to do as far as managing the emotional status. You can refer them to a therapist, but that data is essential for us to identify our drugs, because we have beautiful remedies that come from those ailments, come from those situations in life, come from silent grief, come from grief undermining the constitution. We have beautiful remedies to try and get that essence of the remedy which aligns with the history of the patient. Often emotional triggers, like acute emotional triggers, if there has been a huge fight between a mother and her child, because again that comes from support. So anything that affects the support system of your patient who is suffering from rheumatoid arthritis, any emotional triggers can also trigger your acute exacerbations and your joint inflammations and arthralgia. If you say this to a rheumatologist, you're going to get thrown out because they're like, no, nothing like this happens, but it does. It actually does. You will have ailments from bad news, you will have ailments from shock, you will have ailments from grief, from the sudden death of somebody, you will have ailments from fright, you will have ailments from suppressed anger, and that those will be short-lived outbursts or in internalizing, short internalization of for that patient. It could help us to have that data to choose your acute remedy as well. Because if you don't have any other data, all the other symptoms seem common to rheumatoid arthritis and not aligning with the remedies that you are thinking of, then these triggers definitely help us in choosing the acute remedies as well. Always encourage the patient to manage their mental and emotional health when it comes to any chronic disease, but specifically in rheumatoid arthritis, when it comes to doing physical therapy for their joint mobility, a little bit of exercising, whatever is manageable at their state of rheumatoid arthritis that they're suffering, and also managing the emotional triggers, their stressors that they have, either long-standing or short-standing, whatever it is. If you are not if you're not trained for it, you can suggest refer them to anybody else, but it helps to have a system in place to help them manage that state of affairs at that point in time, which could catapult into bigger episodes in the future. Yeah, so the beauty in homeopathy is that we can draw, like I said, direct parallels. There are direct parallels between what happens to the body and what happens to the mind, and vice versa. So if the patient is not able to express themselves, you can ask a little bit of leading questions, but not direct, like, oh, did you fight? Are you fighting with some issue in your life for the last 20 years since you have this complaint, or whatever it is? Don't ask extremely leading questions, because that could also trigger an emotional reaction. So you will look for an emotional reaction, but it's not the way to go about when managing a chronic disease like this, because it's not just purely a psychological issue or a psychiatric issue here. These are some of the rubrics. The very generic rubrics I have actually considered, but these are some of the rubrics you can are available in the synthesis repertory when it comes to even when you take all of them, you will have your most common, your causticum, pulsatilla, bryonia, Merck, ledum. It's when the other parts of the story start falling in place. It's when the other pieces in the puzzle, like their mental history, their cravings, their aversions, their likes, dislikes, their thermal modalities, it's where that whole picture starts coming in, is where you will be able to choose your constitutional. Sometimes the vitals, as far as your appetite, as far as your thermal modalities are concerned, change in acute flare-ups. If somebody is a very chilly patient, but they're still preferring ice application in an acute flare-up, you would think of ledum, you would think of bryonia, because that is something that is contradictory to their otherwise usual self. But make sure that, of course, like the acute remedy is complementing that of the constitutional or the chronic or intercurrent or anti-miasmatic, whatever you have chosen at that point of time. And like I said, we have 183 remedies for just a simple rubric of inflammation of joints, which can be used for anything, any arthritic involvement of any joint, any acute inflammation. It goes the same for gout, but does not mean all the remedies will work the same way. For us, the diagnosis may not be important for us as far as treatment is concerned, because our remedy, like say aurum, can still help ankylosing spondylosis, can still help heart disease, can still help your lung affections, can still help bone erosions, can still help rheumatoid arthritis, can still help cough, can still help in acute as well. So it's not something that we have one remedy covering a major chunk of ailments. And that is where we need to narrow down to choose the other parts of the history of a patient, to make a story of the patient, to help understand which remedy will help us more. So these are just some of the rubrics that I have taken to understand. Just give an example of two things that I want to emphasize on here. Like I said, if you have a pain rating scale, this is a basic scale, like a numeric 0 to 10. Ask the patient to rate their pain on the first day that they're consulting you. Monitor this every 15 days. By the end of 1 year, 2 years, however long they are getting treated from you, you will have enough data to support that, from 9, it has come to 7, or it has come to 4, it has come to 3. It may not ever become 0, but they will have temporary alleviations of no pain at all. So that is where something we will get enough data to support that we have helped in this patient. Over a period of time, you can also maintain data of how the drugs, especially allopathy is being considered, how the drugs have been reduced over time, and after these drugs, this a particular acute or chronic remedy or intercurrent has been given, and this has helped take the case a little bit further in terms of amelioration in their complaints. There is a very good scale that's already available. The arthritis impact measurement scale can be used across different forms of arthritis. So the idea is to ask them to rate their functionality, their daily function, and quality of life from 1 to 5. This is being recently done even in diseases like cancer, but their scale is a little different because they have different aspects attached to it. But when it comes to specific conditions like ankylosing spondylosis or rheumatoid arthritis in this case, it helps us understand how much the patient is struggling with in terms of their daily activities. Whether they need physical therapy at some point, whether they need psychological therapy at some point, is something that you will be able to assess using the arthritis impact measurement scale. You can read more about it on Google. It's freely available on Google, but this is something that we have used over the last 10 years to assess how our patients are doing over a period of time. I would recommend a follow-up of any case. If you're going to present for rheumatoid arthritis, the follow-up has to be minimum of 3 to 5 years, nothing less than that actually helps in assessing that homeopathies actually help, because they are with increasing time, they are with their increasing inflammatory episodes, with their increasing, how much have we been able to curb it, in the sense, if the patient has had one inflammatory episode every month, after homeopathy, he's having only once in a few months or once in a year now. But of course, they are bad because it's part of rheumatoid arthritis. It's not like we'll be able to tell the patient that you're never going to have an acute episode of your rheumatic complaints in your life. It's not possible. It's going to happen, and it's because a lot of other factors are not in your control. But there is something definitely we can help in terms of reducing the intensity, reducing the frequency, and reducing the height of inflammation that it reaches to every time. My understanding as a young practitioner, I still say young because it's just 10 years. We have the great doctors who have been practicing for 35, 40 years, and with great learnings for us. Advanced stages of any form of arthritis with deformities, but specifically for rheumatoid arthritis, lower potencies in the decimal and centesimal scale, both in acute and chronic phases, works wonders. Biochemic salts, like I said, Calcarea fluor 6x, 12x, Calcarea phos 6x, Kalisulf 6x, Arnica 1x, Ruta 1x, along with the constitutional remedy, works wonders in cases of osteoarthritis along with rheumatoid arthritis. But specifically in case of rheumatoid arthritis, for managing the pains associated with deformities, it definitely helps, because those are not acute pains. They are not acute flare-ups. They're always going to be there. That is something that they're going to struggle with every day of their life. Constitutional remedies and even acute remedies, they work much better when administered in water rather than dry doses. I learned one method while working with Dr. Master. It is called the 5-cup method. I don't know how many of you know it, but please go on YouTube, see it, because it helps reduce our chances of homeopathic aggravation as much as possible, because you can go up to the 10th cup, 13th cup as well. If you know your remedy is right for sure, and know that patient still, after evaluation, that still fits into the same remedy, you can go up to the 13th cup if you want to reduce your homeopathic aggravation, unless if you feel that the patient especially has a very sensitive and a sentient constitution, then you can go further down the line in terms of dilution. Low potencies for an extended period of time. Like I said, if you're starting with a remedy like Auromet 30, please don't expect Auromet 30 to give you miraculous result in 6 months or in 1 year. Yes, there will be improvement, but that's not the improvement that we are looking for in terms of how allopathy looks at it. We are looking in terms of improving their daily function, reducing their episodes, and that is something that you're going to have to observe over a much longer period of time. That's why I said, if you're giving Auromet to a person for at least 30 potency, I would expect it to go for at least 30 or max to 100 in like 4-5 years. If you have a patient being managed on Oromet 30 for a good 3-4 years, you are actually on the right track. That means that patient is still being managed pretty well on a single potency. Try not to mix too many remedies because it just complicates the whole thing. It would just be like we are treating like allopathy, like whatever comes in front of us and we are treating that. If the patient develops aggravation in the 200 potency, avoid 1m and 10m, jump directly to the 50 millisimil, and you have potencies going right up to whichever is available actually in your market, wherever you are, is what you need to consider as well. Even in acute flare-ups in rheumatoid arthritis, try not to go on your 1m, 10ms. If you're going up to 1m and 10m potency because that's only what's available, I would recommend lesser doses, not like you give something like benzoic acid 1m for every 2 hours or something. Don't do it. It will help initially, but the flare up comes back again. It resurfaces again, and it's going to be much bad. It's the same thing that we would be doing in allopathy. Be reducing the inflammation for the time being, and resurfaces in a few days just again, and just as bad or even much worse. Your evaluation at the first case taking is the most important part when it comes to managing rheumatoid arthritis. Investigations, like I said, if they have not been done already with the ready diagnosis, if the patient has not come to you with the ready diagnosis, that's most important. Please don't think that, oh, we don't need to do investigations because we are practicing homeopathy. No, we certainly need to do them. You have your ANA, you have your PENCA, you have your CCP, anti-CCP antibodies, you have your ESR, you have your CRP, you have your hemoglobin, you have your other liver function markers if they are on immunosuppressants. You have a lot of other things to consider apart your renal toxicity as well. Your creatinine, serum creatinine, blood urea, your BUN has to be monitored if the patient is on long-standing immunosuppressants, because that is also something you have to consider in your history. Homeopathy cannot complete the cure of allopathy. That's not the point here, but you have to consider that as a system of the case that you are taking at that point of time. It's only when in 6 months or 1 year time that when the case starts to unravel as the allopathic dosage reduces is where you will see that, yeah, this is the remedy, that this is a picture I was actually looking for. Like, this is what it was. If the patient actually tells you, I've stopped all my allopathic drugs since whatever 6 months, 1 year, and I developed a pain or an episode exactly like the first time I got it, that's actually a good sign. Unfortunately for the patient, but actually a good sign for homeopaths, because that means we are getting purer symptoms. It's not mixed with the allopathic drug interaction anymore. So seek that out. Don't wait for that, but that is something you have to take seriously. If that patient actually describes in as many words to you, don't hesitate to ask your senior practitioners and teachers if you are stuck, because they are more than happy to help you. Confirm your symptom totality with your patient portrait and a sense of the remedy in your practice. Over a period of time, you will, like I have read and practiced over the last 10 years, which is still not a great amount of time, but enough to know that this is the sort of mental makeup I would be looking at when I'm taking the next case of rheumatoid arthritis. Like, this is what I need to ask. This is what I'm seeking. If you know where to look for, it will make your job much, much easier. And your case taking may last anything from 20 minutes to 1 hour, depending to 6 hours even. But the idea is to gain as much point blank data that will help us getting the point blank remedy. So that is only something that's going to help the patient in the long run. And try not to, if you're giving a remedy after 15 days, if you feel like, there is no improvement, don't go to an intercurrent, don't increase the potency, be at it. Confirm your totality of symptoms every time the patient follows up. Is the patient still in the same totality? Have the symptoms changed? Have the symptoms altered? Are there new symptoms? Because for any constitutional remedy to have action in a chronic disease like this takes a long time. So the patient may also experience miraculous recovery. It's not going to happen. because it's a chronic disease. And this is where educating the patient comes handy. Especially if they're under allopathic medication, you will always have them popping pills for every reason. They know that the flare up is going to come. They know that this happens and the flare up comes, and then they can't get out of bed the next day, and then they are stuck for the next 3-4 days as if they're traveling. Now that the access to medication and access to doctors and access to doctor shopping is so frequent, you shouldn't be surprised if the patient doesn't go and consult somebody else for the same complaint. But if you are diligent in your approach to the patient and educate them that there is no point in you going to 10 different doctors for the same thing, because the complaint is going to remain the same. For 10 different people, you are a fresh case every time, and 10 people are going to treat you 10 times differently. Not every patient is treated the same way. So it makes no sense in trying to expect miraculous recoveries in conditions like this, because both from our part and even educating the patient, especially their family, if they are somebody who has disabilities and due to the deformities, etc. So over a period of time, give them the confidence that you can handle the case no matter what happens. In cases like, unfortunately, in cases of endocarditis complications of rheumatoid arthritis, patients do need admission. They do need a hospital setting to treat in. If your rapport with the co-treating doctors is great, you will still be allowed to give homeopathy there, but they will still need 24 hours monitoring. So that is something you cannot be like, yeah, this is something I can manage at home. Don't do it, because it's not the patient's family will not be able to manage it. You will be, unless you own a hospital setting, great, then do it. But otherwise, don't expect the patient to follow it that strictly, because it is something that will need more monitoring than it would for other complaints. These are the references that I used for making this short little presentation that I did. Like I said, the arthritis impact measurement scale I found on the American College of Rheumatology. It's also available online. If you need a link, let me know. I will send it to you, but you can just Google for it. The Manual of Rheumatology, especially the Indian Rheumatology Association, gives a very, very good understanding of rheumatoid arthritis. Of course, you have your medicine textbooks, but when you read from a specialist point of view, it really helps to understand what they are looking for, because that helps improve our clinical understanding of the complaint. Our understanding of our drugs, our repertory, our source books is 100 times more important in such cases. Of course, in all cases, but in such cases, why? Because there is a lot of other interference involved. You have your psychological triggers, you have your drug interaction with allopathic drugs happening. Sometimes they even are taking some Ayurvedic, something or the other, because they are desperate for a cure. Unfortunately, there is none. It is a manageable disease. It's a treatable disease, but I have not seen it so far to be curable in the last 11 years that I'm practicing. If anyone is cured, amazing. I'm very happy for them. But I use Radar Opus Professional. It's a licensed software, and it's something that I've been using for the last 8-9 years, I think, ever since I joined Dr. Master. And that has been a constant source of reading also for me, because all your repertory, all your everything comes under the same roof. And that's it from my end. Thank you very much for listening. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen. If you have any other questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. If you have any specific, if you want me to talk about a case, I can do that. And I have not prepared a presentation of the case, but I can definitely explain orally about a couple of cases that I have to explain what I was talking about in terms of remedy selection.
Thank you so much, Radhika, for this excellent presentation. Let me just see if anyone has any questions.
Yeah.
At all, maybe we just wait for 2 minutes. And
definitely.
Can you please share one case?
Yes. Shall I start, or do you want me to wait? Yeah, okay. So this patient, she's actually started as my mother's patient, and she's been my mother's patient for over 20 years now. She was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 32, and now she's, I think, 56, and it's been that long. She has already had a bilateral hip replacement. She has multiple joint deformities. She was when she was diagnosed, she had her history, her mental history. I'll start with the mental history. She's a physician herself, a modern medicine allopathic physician. She lost her mother at a very young age, and her father remarried. And although her relationship with her um, stepmother was very nice, there was no issue there. There was still that sense of loss of a parent, that the what I spoke about, loss of support. uh, it comes from. You can also take it as grief, ailments from grief also in this case. She started developing these vague joint complaints around when after she delivered her child, and for many years it was not diagnosed as anything, because they just said probably it's because of the calcium, low calcium in your body or whatever. Then she started developing chest congestion, uh, random out of the sudden. She's not a known case of bronchial asthma or anything. And just when all the investigations were done, in one of the episodes of her joint pains is when she got diagnosed with her RA factor came positive. Her ESR was over 150. Her CRP was close to 30, if I'm not mistaken, the first time that it was done at that time. No, CRP was not even done at that time, 22 years ago. So ESR was over 150, and she had already started showing signs of low hemoglobin at that time. Yes, I read the question. Is anemia a feature of RA? Yes, it is. It is a feature of RA. And it's not one of the sole reasons. It's actually one of the complications of chronic RA. It may also result from chronic immunosuppressant intake. So yeah, back to the case. She over a period of time, she used to work as a physician in one of the schools that they would do checkup of school children in municipal schools in the city. And the problem was, in her workplace there was a lot of organization politics. She was somebody who had, ethics and morals, and like all of us have, but like she couldn't go beyond it. Like this was absolutely wrong for her. Things were absolutely in the black and white for her. But she was a very mild person in nature. She's not somebody who would just go shout about it, like, no, this is something I believe in and I'm not going to bow down to you or whatever. She's not somebody who could fight against that. She's not somebody who could that is something she harbored for all her life till she retired a couple of years ago. And over a period of time, she started developing anxiety about it. She, after she got diagnosed with RA, progressively, until she started homeopathy, she was already on quinolones and I think weekly 2 doses of methotrexate at that point. Right now, she's off methotrexate entirely after 20. Like she's been off methotrexate for a very long time. She's not on any immunosuppressant. She's being managed solely on homeopathy with an SOS of a painkiller when she's traveling, because in her case, the traveling, any kind of travel aggravates her complaints, any long-term sitting. So that is something of a system that has been coined over a period of time, that she would take a painkiller in advance before a journey, so that she's able to endure that journey, no matter how short or long. Back to her history, her joint complaints initially were very vague. It's not something you would see is in rheumatoid arthritis, but she was somebody who was very chilly. Her complaints were actually better with piping hot water being poured on the joints, and like almost to something that would burn the skin, but she would feel better about it. One of the remedies that actually worked wonders for her for years on end, still does, is Gavaikam. In 22 years I've seen it being prescribed so many times, and it's managed all her acute flare-ups. And she's still only on the 200 potency of Vicum, even for acute flare-ups. It's never reached 1M. Her constitutional, over a period of time, earlier it used to be, because of her situation at that time, was Kalika, but eventually now it has transformed. It's changed to Kali Iode now over a period of time, because the complications she developed as a result of rheumatoid arthritis were covered better with Kali Iode than Kalika at that point. And in her case, she had also developed erythroman nodosum. The only other remedy which was prescribed to her apart from the usual cough, cold issues, maybe she had a few, but from the rheumatoid arthritis point of view, she developed complications of erythema nodosum. She developed bronchial asthma as a secondary manifestation, and she had varicose. Varicose veins were not a complication of this thing, but she still developed it. And of course, deformities, gross deformities, but the deformities happened over a period of 22 years, which is still a long time for somebody to deal with. And eventually she did go in for bilateral hip replacement. So that is not something that speaks against homeopathy, but the fact that she was able to, her liver function has been supreme in this entire time, despite of being on methotrexate for a few years, because a few years she did discontinue homeopathy thinking that it's not helping. But when she realized that her methotrexate dose is increasing, her Visalone dose was increasing, her body was starting to show signs of hepatotoxicity, is when the doctors told her that we can't give you anymore, you need to figure out another option, or there is something else that's also worsening. That was a time where she was also struggling with the issues at work and her not being able to fight the kind of bribery and corruption there. And that is something, like I said, it correlates into your daily into your practice, into your case of the patient. In her case, in so many years, I know her only for 11 years, 12 years now, but in these 12 years, her complaints are always better when she's mobile, always better when she's, that's why it changed from Kali Cup to Kali Ayur. Because her mobility, maintaining mobility was so important to her that she had to keep moving to help to stay, stay on top of her things as far as her situation was concerned. Another slightly emotional trigger for her was when her daughter moved to America, and she had to go to another country because the visa got rejected and a lot of complications happened. This is something that she pointed out, that whenever I'm stressed about her, because for her, her daughter is everything. So when she's stressed about her and stressed about her future and stressed about that aspect of her life, it is something that she has noted to have direct correlation with her acute flare-ups. Thankfully, she is a physician, so she noted it. The patient, otherwise patients may not notice it quite often, but this is something she noticed it. And over a period of time, she has learned how to manage those emotional stressors as well, how to manage her anxiety as well. She has so far never been put on any sedative or anxiolytics by her physicians, which is also a common prescription when it comes to long-standing chronic diseases. They will be on either some anxiolytic or lonazepam, clonazepam, or your other sedatives like Restil, Trica, whatever your local physicians must be prescribing for good sleep, because pain inhibits sleep, prevents them from sleeping. So that is something that is worth considering. Out of 22 years of follow-up right now, her hemoglobin was checked 2.5 months ago. It was 13.4. Of course, she's menopausal, but it's still 13.4. She's not showing any signs of anemia at the moment. Her erythema nodosum is very much under control. The last remedy prescribed to her for erythema nodosum was 1.5 years ago. For the remedy given was Vipera 30, again lower potency. Excellently helped. She's had 2 episodes so far in the last 5 years of erythema nodosum, and both successfully managed with Vipera. And her acute flare-ups have only fluctuated. Acute flare-up remedies have never been more than 2 or 3 in the last 22 years that I've seen of her history. And this case has been one of the closest to my heart as far as understanding of this disease is concerned, because I know her personally, but the entire history for me was an actual depiction of what I was learning as far as understanding or the management of this complaint was concerned. So I thought I'd share this with you. I would like to know, our biochemic remedies? Yes, so she's also on Calcarea Fluor. She's on 30x right now. She was on 6x for many years. Now she's moved on. We have moved her on to 30x, and we do prescribe biochemic remedies along with constitutional remedies. Right now, she's on Calcarea Flow 30x, 3 tablets twice a day, and she just keeps taking it. So it's something that has helped her manage her managed to help the complaint overall, and it doesn't interfere with the constitutional remedy in any way. And how frequently are they repeated? Yeah, I've already answered that. I hope if there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer, but so far I'm done with on my end.
Hello, Dr. Radhika.
Yes,
Thank you for
hi.
a wonderful session. I have a question to ask.
Yes.
Since these autoimmune disorders, we know that we do the integrated approach, like we go
Yes.
parallelly with the allopathic medication. So how do you manage usually when the patient comes to you? Definitely we see at what stage the patient is coming in, but if he or she is already taking a lot of steroid medications over the period of time, usually what is your approach to taper it and then take over with our medicines, because it's very difficult to understand what is
Yes,
the
yes, indeed.
so I would want to know that aspect.
So mostly when patients, like I said, if they're coming to you within the first 6 months of the diagnosis, thank your stars, because it's much more easier to taper the drugs. With more long-standing 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, it's very, very difficult to taper, because the biggest part is, although we may think that homeopathy and allopathy cannot be given together, homeopathy still ends up working. And in her case, especially when she had come to my mother, and over a period of time, even when she had stopped homeopathy and then restarted again, she was on a lot of immunosuppressant medications. It took us almost a year and a half to take her for us to take her off all immunosuppressant drugs. So it depends on the amount of time within which of the diagnosis that they have come to you. If they have come within 6 months to you of the diagnosis, it's much easier to taper. I would recommend for your medication to go on for at least 1 month, 1 or 2 months, because you will see improvement in terms of their pain despite them taking so there is some amount of pain that they will still experience. They will have some issues long standing despite taking immunosuppressants, which is why they've come to you in the first place. So they will still feel relief in those complaints, and it's not placebo. So if you're giving some remedy for close to a month or 2 months, then when you know that yes, they are showing significant improvement, use the scale, because it really helps in assessing the level of pain. Because that's the first parameter, right, to assess on their degree of pain. So if their pain intensity is lesser than what it was when the first time they consulted you, after a month, at least minimum month, 2 months, depending on, then you can start reducing one of the drugs, depending on how many drugs they are on. One of the immunosuppressants, reduce that, take it off, reduce the second, take it off, reduce the third, take it off. If they're only on one, amazing, you're very, very lucky. If they're on nothing, you're even more lucky. So it depends on the time in which they're diagnosed and in which they come to you. If they're coming to after 5 years, 10 years, it's going to take much longer. And sometimes we have this one case who is still on a single weekly dose of methotrexate, but nothing else. And that dose from 2 mg, it has now come down to 1 mg 6 months ago. So that is something that you will have to evaluate based on your understanding of their improvement over a period of time. Don't be hasty, because they will definitely flare up if they don't stop all the remedies at once, all their medication at once, because they're going to flare up and they're going to be in super bad shape and they're going to walk out. So don't do that. Reduce it over a period of time, knowing that your medication has helped. If your medication, you know for sure that your medication is not helping and you need to change it, do that. Do that first before tapering of their remedies, because the immunosuppression, no matter how much we hate it, it is still keeping them functional for the time being. Our idea is to keep them functional without the immunosuppressant over a period of time. Hope I've answered the question.
Yeah, thank you. It was really helpful.
Most welcome.
Okay, one more question. Like when you are giving in the low potency, the constitutional remedy also, do you think we need to repeat it that frequently for over the period of time? or we give the dose and then wait and watch and then again repeat it, and when you repeat it you keep it as a same potency, or then how, because we are very limited here, isn't it?
Right. So that's the reason why I spoke about the 5-cup method, is it takes your worry about repetition out of the picture. In cases like rheumatoid arthritis, I don't believe your single dose is going to do much difference. They will need repetition in terms of managing their pain and complaints. If they are within the first 6 months to 1 year of the diagnosis, the single dose might help. I have never practiced with a single dose, so I actually don't know. My mother has also never practiced with a single dose, unless it's one of the remedies that this is something I'm going to give in 1 ml and I know it's going to go in one shot for sure. But in these cases, we can't even do that. We can't jump to 1 ml, 10 ml whenever we want, because it's a chronic disease. It's a chronic long-standing disease with long-standing repercussions. So even if the patient has come to you within 6 months or 1 year of the diagnosis, does not mean you can go up to the 1 ml potency. You still have to start on lower potency. I would still recommend going into water doses because it works better. 5-cup method helps to reduce your time of reduce your homeopathic aggravation, which you would expect with a single dose soon after the patient has taken it, and you have no idea. There is no parameter to assess for how long you have to wait. So it's better to give repetitions. You can start with as basic as 1 teaspoon twice a day of the 5-cup method, and then eventually change the repetition according to the aggravation of the symptoms, considering the patient is still on the same totality of symptoms before. And there are some practitioners who give biochemical and acute remedies simultaneously in the same dose. Actually, according to the theory of homeopathy in our materia medica or our organon also, the same potency in both biochemical and acute makes no sense. It's just like doing GB practice in allopathy. It's just like giving ASI 250 with Panadol with your other vitamins, something, everything goes together because they act differently. For us, they act on the same body. Don't forget that. The idea of giving a lower potency in a biochemic is so they act at the tissue level, whereas we are trying to use the generic level action of the acute remedy that we are expecting from the 30th potency or the 200 potency that you are using for your acute remedies. So it could I don't think it makes any difference in keeping them apart by 15-20 minutes because the action still continues to start from your tongue. So I have no idea how that works, or probably it has worked for them, but out of both of them, I'm very, very sure one of the remedies has acted better than the other. Yeah, are there any more questions? No, I can't read any. Yeah.
No, just one question, like the case which you told, right? In Guacam, which all rubrics did you take or symptoms did you consider?
Rubrics were involvement of small joints or finger joints were frequently inflamed, especially the wrist used to be severely inflamed. Wrist, finger joints, elbow, better by warmth. We don't have piping hot water in our repertory, so we have to be careful about using that rubric. Also, at that time, when my mother was treating her with Goicum, the first time she treated with her, my mother did not use software. She used to use Kent's repertory at that time, and Kent's and Boric, I think. So in that, if you read the description of Goicum in terms of just the rubrics, it's a very specific rubric for small articular complaints, small joint complaints with severe inflammation, better by warmth. This was a very specific remedy that on which basis it was chosen at that point. When I joined the practice and I studied the case because I was helping my mother treat and assisting her at that time, is when I went through the repertory and I was using the software at that time, is when I repertorized the whole thing and used other issues she had at that point. She had even your simple lack of appetite, your fatigue, your joint complaints, your body ache all over, even that is covered by Goicum. But the three specific things that we considered were small articular joint complaints and better by warmth and inflammation around the joints.
So how many times did you give it, like for repetition? and how many days?
So initially, whenever she has had an acute episode, we used to give her Goicum. The last was Goicum. She was on Goicum 200. She was on Goicum 200 last year for I think 4 days. That's it. We always give it in a powder form, which is dissolved in water and then taken. It can also be given in the 5-cup method, but in acute flare-ups, we have noticed that dissolving in water directly works a little bit better because it helps in reducing the pain and inflammation much more rapidly and helps to reduce their dependency on your anti-inflammatories. So the last dose she was given was Goicum 200, 5 powders, 6 teaspoon, 2 hour for her acute flare-up. This was year ago.
Okay, thank you.
Most welcome.
Do you use any specific drugs, other specific drugs for this condition, for acute flare-ups?
Acute flare-ups, yes, there's Actia spicata, there is Sticta, there is Gaultheria, sorry, and which are the ones? Bryonia 3X is used pretty frequently. There was one time I had prescribed somebody Lacasis 30 as an acute for her joint complaints, for her acute flare-up of rheumatoid arthritis. Also, you can, I don't know if you have tried this before, but sometimes even your follow-up given a little bit more frequently, considering they are having the same symptoms they would have had otherwise, and there is just a emotional trigger involved or a slight change in their situation involved, or it could be because of overexertion or something, then you don't need to sometimes change your constitutional to an acute. You just need to increase the frequency. Again, why 5-cup helps is because, or in water dry doses, if you don't want to do the 5-cup thing, then you can increase the frequency without worrying about the aggravation part of it, because this is something that daily life has caused. It's not something that's out of the ordinary for them. So this is something that you can definitely consider is increasing the repetition of your current constitutional remedy. Keep it 4 times a day, 5 times a day, and then reduce it over a period of time, and then bring them back to once or twice a day, depending on how you have decided your dosage.
Okay.
Okay, Radhika. I think thank you so much.
Most welcome.
You've seen that people have really attentive and
Yeah. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
no, not at all. Our pleasure. Thank you so much for sparing the time from your practice and
Thank you.
okay.